So today we're going to dive into a really fascinating personality type. It's one that, if you listen to the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, often doesn't really come into its own until way later in life. Let me just start by asking you something. Have you ever had that feeling, that kind of persistent feeling of being just a little bit out of sync with everybody else? It's that sense that while the rest of the world seems to be sprinting ahead, you're moving to the beat of a different drum. Not lost exactly, but just operating on a totally different timeline. But here's the thing. What's so amazing is that the great Carl Jung didn't see this as a flaw. Not at all. He saw it as a period of deep, intentional preparation for something much bigger down the road. Okay, so that brings us to our first idea here. A life lived backwards. We're going to really dig into what this feeling of being misplaced looks and, more importantly, feels like, especially in the first half of your life. Does any of this hit home for you? Like, you find small talk absolutely exhausting because you're just craving something with more depth, or you're too reflective to just chase after those quick, flashy wins. You're super independent, which makes it tough to really fit in with any one group, and yet you're just too tuned into the world to completely check out. It's like you're caught in this constant push and pull. So you might be asking, why? Why does this happen? Well, that leads us right into our next section, which we're calling the struggle of depth. We're going to look at what's really going on under the surface. See, the crucial thing to get is that society, it has these benchmarks, right? Get the career, buy the house, start the family, all by a certain age. And those benchmarks are all built for speed and quick decisions. Your natural rhythm, which is all about depth and really thinking things through, was constantly being graded against a test it was never, ever designed to pass. And here's where the two paths really diverge. What the world might have looked at and called indecision, Jung would say, no, that's depth processing. What looked like inefficiency was actually you conserving energy. And what someone might have totally misunderstood as laziness, nope, that was you building tolerance for uncertainty, which, by the way, is a superpower later in life. Just let that sink in for a second. That feeling of exhaustion, that sense of always swimming upstream. Jung's perspective is that this was your psyche literally protecting its most valuable resources. Your life force was being kept in reserve, saved for a time when it would be truly, deeply needed. All right, so now we get to the big pivot, the turning point. This section, the great midlife shift, is where the whole story starts to flip on its head. I want you to stop thinking of life as a race. Instead, picture it like a massive construction project. The entire first half of your life wasn't about building up. It was about excavation. It was about digging a deep, unshakable foundation. Then midlife comes, and that's the consolidation phase, the turn inward, where you take stock of everything you've gathered. And only then, in the second half, does the real structure finally become visible to everyone. This is just such a powerful way to look at it, isn't it? All those detours, all those times you felt lost or stuck or full of questions, they weren't mistakes. They were the hard, unseen labor of clearing the ground. And that ground, well, that's now your solid as a rock foundation. For a lot of people, midlife is a crisis. It's the sudden, shocking collapse of meaning. But for this personality type, it's the exact opposite. It's not a crisis. It's a shift. It's that aha moment when all those different pieces you've been collecting your whole life finally click together, creating this incredible sense of inner coherence. It feels like coming home to yourself. And oh man, this is where it gets really good. In this next part, the power of integration, we get to see how all those things that felt like liabilities before now transform into your greatest strengths. So the key Jungian idea for this stage of life is a big word, individuation. But all it really means is the process of finally shedding all the masks and the roles that society handed you and at last becoming who you actually are. It's not about inventing someone new, it's about uncovering the person who was there all along. And a huge part of that journey is something called shadow integration. This is basically when you stop fighting with yourself. You stop labeling parts of you as good or bad. That ambition you were maybe scared of, or that assertiveness you pushed down, it all gets brought on board. And all that energy you were using to keep those parts in check, it's suddenly free. It's all available for you to use, consciously and with purpose. And look at the direct payoff here. That hesitation you've had your whole life, that wasn't a flaw. It was training you for precision. That tendency to hold back, that wasn't weakness, you were building contained strength. And all those years you spent just quietly watching and taking things in, you were becoming a master of pattern recognition.
And this all leads to this incredible shift in who you are. Your identity is no longer tied to what other people think. Failure isn't personal anymore. It's just information. Criticism doesn't sting like it used to. And honestly, praise doesn't have the same hold on you either. Your sense of self is finally, truly anchored from within.
Which brings us to the final and I think the most important takeaway from all of this. You are never behind. Not for a second. Just think back on all those years, all those times you felt like you were falling behind, just trying to catch up. That feeling of delay. Well, that was actually insulation. It was protecting you. It was keeping you from locking yourself into a life or a job or an identity that was way too small for the person you were always meant to become. And how about that feeling of being all over the place? You know, too many interests, jumping from one thing to the next, feeling like you can never just settle on one path? That wasn't a lack of focus. That was architecture. You are meticulously building a complex, resilient, and deeply interconnected inner world, a structure that's now capable of handling immense weight and complexity. So your entire life, it's been a preparation. You've been building this unique gravity, this quiet authority. The question is no longer how do I catch up? The only question that matters now, is what are you going to do with the weight, the wisdom, and the power that you now finally carry?